Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. Is there anything worse than an ugly podcast player? There are plenty around. And in fact, in some of the older podcast hosts like Libsyn and Blueberry, they're a little nondescript and a little not fun. But as the technology is getting better and better, there are plenty of platforms that are creating really lovely players that look awesome on your website. And you don't need to go and hire a designer to do this. There are some plug and play options that can make your podcast player really fit into the style of your website. If you already have a podcast host like Blueberry or Libsyn and you think that their players are damn ugly, then I would suggest a podcast player called Smart Podcast Player by Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income fame. He is a delightful guy. He knows a lot about online business, and he has created a player that looks really nice that you can embed onto your website. And it doesn't matter where you host your podcast. You can just link it up with the podcast player, and it looks really lovely. So I'll leave links to all of these suggestions at podschoolpodcast.com. You can find the show notes page there. If you haven't got a podcast host yet, I would suggest either Omni or Whooshkaa. Both of these platforms have really great design when it comes to their player. I use Whooshkaa for this podcast and my other podcast, You've Got to Start Somewhere. So if you head to the show notes page, you can see what my podcast player looks like on the website. And the great thing about Whooshkaa is that the way that their podcasts play natively in Twitter and Facebook is really great as well. So those are some options if you think to yourself, these players that I've been seeing are really ugly. If you've already got a podcast host and you don't want to shift it, then that's fine. You can go with something like the Smart Podcast Player, or if you just Google for podcast players, if that one doesn't tickle your fancy design-wise, there are others out there that you can find. Or alternatively, if you're just starting out, then go with a platform like Whooshkaa or Omni, where they have thought about the design of the player that goes on your website, and then that's just one less thing you have to additionally buy because it comes with your hosting account. There is no reason to have an ugly podcast player on your website. It's a small thing, I get it, and it's not all about appearance, but geez, you just want it to look nice and professional. If you've poured a lot of effort into your website particularly, then it helps if your podcast player suits that style. That's all for this episode. Please head to iTunes if you are enjoying the shows to leave a little review there, and you can head to podschoolpodcast.com to send me an email if you would like a question answered on this show. I'm always happy to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening. Next week is Christmas, and even podcasters have to have a little holiday sometimes, so I will be away for a few weeks but back early next year. I hope you have a really wonderful break, that you're getting some time off to relax, that if you do have a podcast that's going over the Christmas period, that you've batch recorded and the episodes are scheduled so you can just roll them out while your feet are up and you're sipping cocktails somewhere. Have a wonderful new year. Thank you so much for all your support of the show. I really appreciate you popping me into your ear holes each week, and I'll be back next year with plenty more tips. I will see you bright and early in January. Have a wonderful break.
That's all for today.